Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we'll go through the usual. Tonight's going to be a mixture. There's only a small amount of intel. There's an awful lot of BS on the internet, sadly, which I'll cover in part. The usual things to ponder. Some hard-hitting pieces and also some history revision designed to break down the programming and also a possible way home. So all that's coming up with the usual Q&A at the end, and we'll get into it now with the emails and all the links to the site. And the email for the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com, and the link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881, and the articles website, which you can also listen to this show live from there also. It's also got all the archives of most of the recent shows and also the bigger shows that we've done, the Humanity Unplugged 1 and 2, the Savali shows, the Faction show, the Future of Humanity show, the Kingdom of Manor, and the UPU show. So that's on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have a Facebook social media alternative, which is MeWe.com. And that is /join/truth-honour, 4 dashes and then integrity. But if you can't find it, just send an email to the truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com and we'll add you to that site. We also have the People's Club donations website link, which is thepeoplesclub.org, and that's all about the foundation. So go and have a look at that. Right, where do we start first? Well, normally I do a run-in piece, but not tonight. I'm going to go straight into some news items that I picked up, and that will create discussion. And then in the second hour there'll be intel and a fair bit of op-ed pieces that need to be addressed. Right, where do we go? Turkey first. And this is interesting because I've mentioned until I'm blue in the face, no, not blue chicken in the face, but just blue in the face, if that reared its head again this week, about the issues to do with the CIA. What pleases me is the amount of shows that are exposing it on the History Channel about the drugs, about the MK Ultra, even the 4400 spoke about a breakaway group. So Turkey has decided to go after and issue an arrest warrant for former CIA officer. There is no former. Graham Fuller, and the prosecutor accuses Mr. Fuller, who is the former vice chairman of the US National Intelligence Council, of having links to the Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen. Mr. Gulen, who lives in the US, is blamed by Turkey for last year's failed coup attempt. Now he denies the claim, but they always do that, and the warrant also accuses Mr. Fuller of attempting to overthrow Turkey's government. Well, they've interfered in 61 elections since the Second World War, and they've overthrown a number of governments, so it kind of fits. Now, since then, more than 50,000 people have been arrested in Turkey pending trial over links to Mr. Gulen, and another 150,000 people have been sacked or suspended from jobs in the public and private sectors since the coup attempt on July the 15th, 2016. House cleaning. Told you it wasn't just this country, it's going all over. So they've been sacked or suspended. There's others being sacked and suspended for having links to other organisations that are not good as well. The UN has decided to do something of value, and a plan for zero tolerance on plastic pollution of the oceans may be agreed by nations at a UN Environment Summit. Governments are being asked to move towards a legal treaty banning plastic waste from entering the sea. You know, I don't know whether you've all seen the pictures of the floating plastics. Like, it just goes on for miles. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Maybe our military would be better suited picking that up rather than causing more dumping of armaments and nuclear waste. At the moment, ships are prohibited from dumping plastic overboard, but there is no international law against plastics flooding into the sea from the land. Experts say ocean plastics are an obvious subject for a global treaty, and plastics present a large-scale threat, particularly to birds and mammals. Plastic pollution doesn't recognise international borders, but delegates in Nairobi preparing the way for the UN's Environment Ministers meeting next week are said to be in broad agreement on the need for tougher action to combat the plastics crisis. And they're also setting up a working party to explore options for global action to tackle plastic waste and microplastics. The US has volunteered to take part, but is traditionally resistant to agreeing any international laws. Well, maybe we should send ships out to clean up the plastic rather than sending ships into regions where we don't belong, like Strait of Hormuz and the South China Sea, to give two examples. Another NSA employee has been exposed this week, and he admitted on Friday that he had illegally taken from the agency classified documents believed to have had subsequently been stolen from his home by computer hackers, allegedly working for Russian intelligence. Mr. Pho, of Ellicott City, pleaded guilty to one count of willful retention of national defence information, an offence that carries a possible 10-year sentence. Prosecutors agreed not to seek more than 8 years, however, and Mr. Pho's attorney will be free to ask for a more lenient sentence. Really? He remains free? Yeah. Imagine if we stole classified documents. You think we'd be free? No, me either. He remains free while awaiting sentencing, which will be on April 6th next year. And he has been charged in secret, although some news reports have given a limited description of the case. Officials unsealed the charges on Friday, resolving the long-running mystery of the defendant's identity. Russia. You know, those bad boys, they're always doing terrible things to everyone, invading countries, interfering in elections, you know, giving their people land, telling them to go and build farms for nothing. Terrible people, them Russians. And they've done something else terrible. Pardon the sarcasm. The State Duma Committee for Security and Countering Corruption has approved a draft law offering state protection to those who reveal facts of corruption to law enforcement agencies. The bill will now progress to the first reading in the Duma, and the bill, developed by the Labour Ministry and drafted in the lower house by the government in mid-October this year, offers widespread state protection to those who report corruption to state agencies. The exact measures listed in the draft include making sure that the report remains confidential, the person given the advice is given free legal advice, also protection from unlawful sacking and or other sanctions at work, and protection from any other infringement of the citizens' rights. In particular, the bill states that a person reporting facts about corruption can be remanded only after a special commission session with the participation of a local prosecutor. The term of protection is set at 2 years from the moment of the original report. We could do with that here. This is basically what I've been talking about for the last 4 years, about building a platform which then gives people the safety net to come forward. You know, and that will include probably some people that we in the alternative media don't like. Some certain individuals may well want to step out. They know time is ticking against them. So what Russia has done is build a platform of security and safety for those people who want to come forward. This is proper swamp cleaning, and I would like to see it take place here, like tomorrow. No more people coming forward and exposing what the entity known as Hillary Clinton has done and finding out whether in a week they're dead. You've all seen the lists of how many people have died connected to the Clintons. Time for our government and other governments to do this, the same thing. Provide a platform of safety for the people exposing the criminality. The European Parliament this week, this is smacks of faction wars, to me anyway, has adopted a resolution which calls for an EU-wide embargo on arms sales to Saudi Arabia over the alleged war crimes it has committed in Yemen. The resolution also criticises EU members for selling arms to the Gulf Kingdom, and the EU Parliament condemns in the strongest terms the ongoing violence in Yemen and all attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure which constitute war crimes. You know, has anybody ever asked, what has Yemen done? Nobody asks those questions, do they? Why are they invading them? It's the same with Syria. Why did they invade Syria? Oh, they're Muslims, they're bad. Really? Go and look at the Albert Pike prophecy of 1888 and then tell me Muslims are bad. So the resolution was passed in the European Parliament last Thursday, and it goes on to say that dozens of Saudi-led airstrikes have been blamed for indiscriminately killing and wounding civilians in violation of the laws of war, including through the use of internationally banned cluster munitions. I wonder where they got them from. Indeed. Off to Greece. Don't be surprised if this follows here. I know there's certain types of auctions here anyway, but this is like statewide auctions. But the Greek police used tear gas on Wednesday to disperse protesters from an Athens courtroom where they've been trying to halt dozens of planned for foreclosure auctions of property. The foreclosure auctions are a key condition of the country's international bailout, but has been repeatedly disrupted by leftist activists, whatever that means, leftist activists. Quit with that left and right, all the nonsense that is, who say they are unfair and target the poor. Go figure. TV footage showed protesters hurling objects at police in a corridor filled with smoke and police pushing them back. Notaries who handle the auctions had been boycotting them due to safety concerns, but returned to work on Wednesday after the leftist-led government said it would improve the process and increase security. No, why don't you just give the houses back to the people they belong to? Then there's no problem. Common sense, you see. Greece has also agreed to launch foreclosure e-auctions, which began on Wednesday after being pushed back by 2 months. It's time people stop buying them foreclosures. If nobody buys them, they're a millstone round their neck. Then they have to give them back. Because they can't carry on paying all the state taxes. Or the home insurance. Another example of the idiocy coming out of the church. And this kind of defies belief, really. But a leading clergyman in the UK, apparently he's called the Very Reverend Kelvin Holdsworth, urged Christians should pray for Prince George to be gay. Really? That's how they can go and interfere with him in the church? It's unbelievable. Lord blesses George, the son of Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, with the love of a fine young gentleman. It's not just little George's love life the Reverend is concerned with, apparently. In fact, the reason he wants the Prince, who is third in line to the throne, to be into men is so the Church of England will be forced to support same-sex marriage. Oh dear, this is like Henry VIII all over again, isn't it? Oh, you can't marry, because you're a Catholic, you can't marry twice. What a load of nonsense. No, they just wanted to create a separate religion so that they can divide and conquer. That was called Protestants. Now, when I uploaded this bit to this story and added bits in, Trump was due to visit Utah. Now he's already visited, and he's already announced plans to reduce the size of Bears Ears and Staircase Escalante national monuments by 2/3. Those monuments were designated by former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, respectively. Trump's move would be the first such act by a president in half a century. Now, as per usual, the environmentalists and the tribal leaders have decried that decision as illegal and an affront to Native Americans. Leaked documents obtained by the Associated Press show that Trump plans to shrink Bears Ears National Monument by near 85%. And reduce the Grand Staircase Escalante monument by almost half. Now, that plan would cut the total amount of land in the state's Red Rock County, which is protected under monument status, from more than 3.2 million acres to 1.2 million acres. I'm all for opening up land for the benefit of the people, but this smacks to me like a land grab for the mining people. You know, if it's you know, it's not just the cabal who fall for that, because some of the native people haven't actually helped themselves. Well, they have helped themselves to a large amount of money, but basically sold out, because they're doing the same thing. And this is where we have to be different. If you're going to claim your land back, don't be doing the same desecration of the land by digging for oil and silver and uranium and all that nonsense, which goes into the same cabal corporation hands as they do. You know, protection of wildlife and protection of nature and the balance of nature is far more important than digging up barrels of oil or bits of metal. We've got loads of bits of metal. We don't need any more. You know, just coal recycling would help. So that's not a smart move by Trump, but I would like to know the full details of why it's being done. Is there a hidden agenda, or is it just giving it back to the people? But the problem is the people can't afford that land, so you know who buys it up, and that's what concerns me. But I'll see if I can get more details on it, whether there's some better reasons for it, but it doesn't look good. Germany. Well, the war may have ended 70 years ago, 72 years ago, but the kickback to it is still going on. Beggars belief, this. A German court in Detmold has sentenced Holocaust denier Ursula Haverbach to 14 months in prison after the 89-year-old woman lost her appeal to a prior conviction on Tuesday. However, 4 months were shaved off the original conviction of 18 months. Prosecutors wanted the sentence upheld, and Haverbach's lawyers were seeking exoneration. Now, initially the court had sentenced Haverbach to 8 months in prison in 2016, after she sent a letter to the town's mayor, Rainer Heller, claiming that Auschwitz was not a concentration camp. Following the trial, the octogenarian handed out pamphlets to journalists as well as the judge and the prosecutor entitled "Only the Truth Will Set You Free," in which she once again denied the Nazi atrocities, and Haverbach was handed an additional 10-month sentence for handing out pamphlets. No one is denying, least of all me, that atrocities took place. Was there 6 million? Absolutely not. The figures don't stack up. Where are all the bodies? You know, there's claims of gas chambers, but to have the gas chambers that they claimed was in there, all the walls would be blue, because that's the residue of Zyklon B, which is what was said was used in those concentration camps. None of the walls are blue. And, you know, the fact remains that there was 138 or 146 references to the term 6 million and Jews between 1888 and 1945. Why were all those references of 6 million? That's what you call programming. And it was all about compensation and reparation per head. Well, 300,000 people doesn't bring that much money in, but 6 million does. And in my opinion, this is what that German cause has done, is continued fascism. At the end of the day, truth never feared investigation. If you can't investigate it, then it's likely not the truth, is it? Another sad story, in fact the next two are kind of linked in many ways. The nation, America, homeless population has increased this year for the first time since 2010, according to records. I think it's been increasing year on year. And they're saying it's been driven by a surge in the number of people living on the streets in Los Angeles, go figure, and other West Coast cities, again, go figure. It's been going on for 4 years. The US Department of Housing and Urban Development released its annual point-in-time count on Wednesday, and the report showed that nearly 554,000 people were homeless across the country. Over 500,000. When we've got 23 million homes empty. That figure, according to HUD, is up nearly 1% from 2016, and of that total, 193,000 people had no access to nightly shelter, and instead were staying in vehicles, tents, the streets and other places considered uninhabitable. The unsheltered figure is up by more than 9% compared to 2 years ago, and the increases are higher in several West Coast cities, where the explosion in homelessness has prompted at least 10 city and county governments to declare states of emergency since 2015. They should have declared it in 2013-14 when I first warned of it. Said it on Cosmic Voice. It was either 2013 or 2014 they were going to empty out California. You could see it coming. Now there was another story involving HUD, and yesterday they told the VA had told advocates and state officials in a December the 1st phone call that the programme, which provides housing vouchers to veterans via the HUD programme, would be drastically cut, and the money allocated to the programme would instead go to VA hospitals for use as they see fit. Veterans advocates, lawmakers and some HUD officials pushed back on the move, contending that it would worsen conditions for veterans. And more than half of those housed via the programme have problems like chronic illness or substance abuse. Indeed. The Department of Veteran Affairs has reversed course today on a plan to essentially end what they were trying to end was a $460 million programme that helps provide housing to homeless veterans after facing blowback when the news of the decision broke. Whoever is in that organisation and made that decision should be fired on the spot. The fact that it took people power to reverse it is good in some ways. But, you know, on a day where the US Army decided to spend $750 million to one of the corporate lackey firms, Northrop Grumman, for warplanes, they're talking about cutting programs for the soldiers that have returned it in a bad way. It just makes me sick. It really does. Where are we next? This is fairly, this should take us up to a music break. A number of stories wrapped into one. And the UN General Assembly this week voted overwhelmingly to disavow Israeli ties to Jerusalem as part of a 6 anti-Israel resolutions it approved on Thursday in New York. This was last Thursday. The vote was 151 in favour and only 6 against, with 9 abstentions. The resolution came as the Trump administration was rumoured to be actively considering relocating its embassy in Jerusalem. As you'll know, this news has gone on. I will cover that shortly. The president has said that he had given it serious consideration to the matter and were looking at it with great care. The US State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said that President Trump had until December the 4th to make a decision on the embassy relocation or waive the matter for another 6 months. In New York, only 6 counties of the 193 UN member states fully supported Israel's ties to Jerusalem. They were as follows: Canada, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, the United States and Israel. The 9 countries who abstained were Australia, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Honduras, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, South Sudan and Togo. And the resolution stated that any action taken by Israel, the occupying power, to impose its laws, jurisdiction and administration on the holy city of Jerusalem are illegal and therefore null and void and have no validity whatsoever. Hear, hear. Now, obviously Mr. Trump, or the entity known as Mr. Trump, has poured more fuel on that fire by announcing that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. A ridiculous move. And I'm not defending him or it. That has to be reversed. Basically, Trump's poured fire big time. And that's going to escalate into war in the Middle East, which only serves one purpose, as we know. Certainly not for the benefit of the American people. Since when is interfering in Israel and Palestine America first? It's just not, is it? He's been in power, in inverted commas, 11 months now. How long do we wait before we realise maybe he's not the saviour so many thought he was? Now, the issue, back in Cosmic Voice, let me just put some groundwork here. I read a manifesto in the 1990s, and some of you will have heard this before and will remember it. Some new listeners won't. In the 1990s, there was a lot of documents put up on the internet before the powers that be realised, oops, this could be an issue, and started taking sites down. It's not a recent event, it's been going on a long time. And there was a lot of documentation put out, historical facts and programmes and everything. And if you were accessing the right site, you would find them. Until it got shut down. And this was a particular Vatican-led manifesto. And the gist of it was that they were going to empty out the whole of the Middle East. and I mean all of it. And it would go as far as Egypt, which I'll explain how and why it does in a piece just after this. It all ties in. It would involve Iraq, portions of Iran, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and also Israel. Now, eventually, they would have a problem of removing the people of Israel, or the ones who are called Jews. Except they've already started with the genetics. They announced it last year. It didn't get trumpeted, it didn't go all over the media, it just got buried like everything else. That 90% of Jews were not from that region. Now, for those of you who've done research, you'll know that's not something you won't already know. Because most of those Jews were from the Ukraine, Kazakhstan. That's why they're called Khazarians. These were the Bolshevik people that caused mayhem in Russia nearly 100 years ago. Same people. Now, they think they're going to empty everybody out, and they've made a good job so far. Libya, Iraq, all flooded into the EU, which is the second stage of breaking down the EU's financial and social structure, so all the control and power goes to the East, which was set up in 1913 when the West gained financial control via the Federal Reserve. So the Caliphate would go a continuation of the current wall. That was the start. And that wall would go all the way through to southern Turkey. And the wall would get higher. And then the Vatican would move out of Rome when the seven hills burn, and they'll burn for a reason. There will be an incident on the Dome of the Rock to smash it, and then they will build the third temple and rule the New World Order with one world government and one world religion behind the wall. That was the manifesto I read back in the 90s. Now, when I stated that in Cosmic Voice, Drake kind of dismissed it, can't happen. But look what's happened since. Syria's been emptied out. Part of Lebanon's been emptied out. War in South Turkey. We covered the story about the CIA involvement in Turkey and overthrowing the government. Why? Because they put their own puppets in and then continued the wall through Turkey. That region has nothing to do with Jesus or anything else referred to in the Bible. That's everything to do with the Anunnaki region. That whole region is where they used to be. And all these wars are the same as what was taking place then, arguments between the families, where they divided up into 5 regions. Well, look what we've got today. 5 factions. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not. It's just not. And this is probably why we've now got the war in Yemen. That's the south end. Maybe the war will go right along there. So the next war will be Oman. Unless it's all stopped. Except Trump has just lit the touch paper. Now, this is something I came across, and this is where it all ties in. There's been a lot of archaeological digging and looking for evidence of the biblical sites, the so-called biblical sites anyway, and evidence of the Temple Mount. Now, that's the Jewish name for it, except the real name is Haram al-Sharif, Dome of the Rock. It's currently in the Muslim section of the city. Once Jerusalem becomes Israel's capital, you know what happens next. Now, a guy by the name of Ernest T. Martin, a doctor, who's now deceased, no surprise, had done extensive research on the Temple Mount and also supported it with evidence from the writings of Josephus. Now, the reports of early Christian pilgrims and maps dating back from the Crusades, what we now call the Temple Mount, is in fact the remnants of the old Herodian Roman fortress that was called Antonia. Remember that name. Now, the Temple of Herod was so badly destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD that even its location, which is actually to the south and west of what is now called the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, was forgotten. Sound familiar? Rewrite history. Now, this was in part because the Jews for that region were all expelled by the Romans, and apart from the Roman fortress, for half a century or more, the city was no more than a heap of rubble. So the Temple Mount that they go on about is south and west, and they've also found the evidence of where it actually is. It came up on the is it LiDAR? So they matched the writings of Josephus and found it through new technology today. So that's not the Temple Mount. Now, this all goes back to, a lot of Americans think the Republic and the Constitution and the Senate all came from the Founding Fathers. And that's where it originated from. Except there was a civil war going on in 31 BC, which involved Octavian and Mark Antony. Antonia. I told you to remember that name. And as the Roman Senate at Octavian's direction, declared war on Cleopatra, Egypt, and proclaimed Antony a traitor. And then with Antony dead, Octavian was the undisputed master of the Roman world. In 27 BC, Octavian was granted the title of Augustus, marking the final stage, listen closely, in the transformation of the Roman Republic into an empire, with himself as the first Roman emperor. Sound familiar? Roman Senate, Roman Republic, into an empire. Now, the reconciliation came soon after Antony rejected an offer by Gaius Trebonius, who was one of Caesar's generals, JC. It's another famous JC around that time. Are they one and the same? To join a conspiracy to assassinate Caesar, and soon after assuming office together, the Lupercalia festival was held on the 15th of February 44 BC. The festival was held in honour of Luper. You thought rituals are for the psychopaths. Now, the honour of Luper was the she-wolf who suckled the infant orphans. Oops. Known as Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. Now you know who they worship. Now, the political atmosphere of Rome at the time of the festival was deeply divided, and Caesar enacted a number of constitutional reforms. There's another term that's kind of familiar. Constitutional reforms, Senate, Republic, Empire, which centralized effectively all political powers within his own hands. He was granted further honors, including a form of semi-official cult, with Antony as his high priest. That's where the black magic comes in, the high priest and the high priestess, which is basically the idiots in the courtroom with the gowns on. They're high priests and high priestesses, the judges. Same thing. The day before the festival, Caesar had been named dictator for life. Really. Effectively granting unlimited power. Isn't that what we've got in this country? Well, certainly what we've had. Caesar's political rivals feared these reforms were his attempts at transforming the Republic into an open monarchy. So this is what's kind of playing out in the backdrop, and it's all surrounding one rogue country that never existed to begin with. If you don't believe that, go and read the Balfour Declaration. You know, there's some really bad stuff going on in the early 1900s, particularly between 1910 and 1920. Yes, we had the First World War, which was about getting rid of the Russian Tsars, and also the peoples known as the Rus, and also the Tartaria area, a vast area that's just faded into the mists of time. Now all this, just to wrap it all up, all this comes after Israel this week decided in its infinite stupidity to launch an air bombing raid on Syria. Why? all the war's been going on, it dies down and Israel starts launching missiles and planes. Smacks to me of escalation. It's certainly a hostile act, because it wasn't defensive, was it? And yet the portal people here sit here and say nothing. For those of you new to the show, the portal people are the newsreaders. The predictable outcry unfolded today when it was alleged 2 rockets were fired at Israel but failed to reach their target and landed in Palestinian territory. Actually, it's all Palestinian territory. But people like me, maybe some of the listeners, hopefully a lot of the listeners, you not notice that these rockets fired at Israel all go off at certain times. They only go off when Israel decides to launch an offensive somewhere, or there is a state visit from a representative of another country, or peace talks. Every single time. It just happens far too often for it to be a coincidence. And quite frankly, it's damning evidence of a false flag event designed to gain sympathy from the poodle portal people in America. And even after all that, Trump announces that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. What a load of bollocks that is. It's all an illusion. Hi all, and welcome back to the second hour. Just an illusion indeed. Back to life, back to reality. There's a few who need good doses of reality. Not much in the way of intel. Things still vibrate and echo behind the scenes. There's no evidence of anything going on in DC currently. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of BS. Loop people, the ones who were around 4 years ago, coming out with the same crap. And whilst we all hope and wish for the mass arrests, until I get concrete evidence, I will not be putting it out. And as it stands to date, there is no concrete evidence. I'm not raising people's hopes up. But one thing I will state is there will be no martial law declared in this country, period. Some clowns decided to put that out this week. More internet bullshittery designed to distract people who can't or won't be able to deliver their famed or infamous now RV. Yes, they're still trying. I think it's up to 1,035 failed attempts. But robots just repeat, don't they? Now, the clowns are going around. They're in a massive amount of panic. And they're going around offering all kinds of people all kinds of inducements and sundry titles and various other promises now to appease those who are still waiting for their pay. There's a load of mercenaries and cabal members who have not been paid in many months, and as for the mercenaries, actually a couple of years. some of them have now decided to turn on their paymaster. Oops. Not before time. Now, a message to those people who are being given the inducements or seducements. Like we have said all along, you won't be getting paid. You just won't. That's why they have wealth and we don't. They don't pay. Whilst they were stealing from the global trust, they used the public's money. Now they have to use their own. They don't like using their own money. But wasn't it one of the things Trump says? You never use your own money in business. You use other people's. That's the way business of that level operates. Everyone's just a pawn. And the reality to you people who are being offered all kinds is you won't get anywhere near the titles or the money, as they will remove you like the pawns that you are. That is life and reality. It's the case of two birds with one stone with the clowns. Dead means they won't have to pay you or give you your bogus titles. Mr. Obama's title didn't work too well for him, did he? Think about it. And you know the solution. Step down and help before they take you out. TikTok. You haven't got much time. Neither is Clinton, Netanyahu, or Kushner. And that's about it for... Oh no, one more thing. Bitcoin. Bitcoin crashed this week. Big time. Then he said there was to cover it up with a hacking. No, it crashed. And they keeping, yet again, another illusion going. It's now up to $13,000 for what is basically a Las Vegas gambling token. The economy is collapsing. Some of the better known corporations, Sears, Target, you name it, Walmart, downsizing, they're all collapsing. And yeah, the stock market has tripled in 4 years. How does that work? The cash flow is collapsing, and yet, well, probably right actually, Bitcoin, some of them who started that, like putting coins up the butt, I know that. The Bitcoin goes to 13,000. Based on what? On collapsing economy. You don't have to be a financial analyst to see the illusion through that. So it did crash, I think it was Sunday or Monday, and they said there was a hacking, and then they bumped it back up. Now all this, I'll have to get the latest figure, but they mentioning about how much Bitcoins are in circulation. That's been steadily declining per day for the last month. The last figure I got is 7 million. And it's going down. Right, let's get into some op-ed pieces. I've got a feeling one show soon we'll have an explosion of intel. But it's still interesting what's going on. Now, there's been lots of reports about booms going off all around the world, but particularly in Southwest America and also off the west coast of Florida. Except there's no evidence of earthquakes or missiles being fired. Something that people may need to consider. Has anyone considered that those booms may not be from our world? Something to ponder. Now, the concept of what we know as time has changed. Some of you will resonate with this. Some of you may see it later. Maybe you won't. Things feel different. You can't put your finger on it, but you're sensing it on a vibratory rate level. What has changed is days drift into weeks very, very quickly currently. Even this show barely feels like I finished last Thursday and we're into another week. It barely feels like we started THI, and yet it's 19 months. People also may be feeling a strange feeling of being here and also not being here at the same time. Again, something to think on. Sleep patterns are all over the place. Waking up around 3 a.m. Some will be familiar with that. And the times you get tired during the day are way off the charts. It's not just the late evening. It's 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If that fits in with you, then you're not alone. And people may also be experiencing of not wanting to eat as much, and then wanting to eat at very strange times. If this is you, you're not alone. That's what's going on. Next piece, what are we going on? North Korea. I was going to include this in the news, but I decided to pull up some figures. And, of course, the portal people are ramping up the fear program that North Korea's latest firing missile, but can we be 100% certain that it was North Korea that actually fired it? And on the said day it was fired. No, we can't. We're taking their word for it. Now, apparently, it went the highest ever, according to the portal people. And this is a grave concern to America. Well, it actually travelled 4,500 kilometres up and 1,000 kilometres long. So I decided to pull some figures and get some perspective. So it went 4,500 kilometres up and 1,000 miles long. Let's reverse those figures. So that it went 1,000 kilometres up and 4,500 kilometres long. That then puts Guam in range, as Guam's 3,400 kilometres. But Pearl Harbor's not. 7,400. So that's 3,200 kilometres further than that missile travelled. San Francisco is double that figure at 9,000 kilometers, and New York is 10,800 kilometers. So these claims of it reaching the mainland are pure folly and actually a conspiracy. Oops. And it's a real conspiracy that's been played on the American public for all living Americans' life. The fear program. I've got a piece later on. In fact, it's following this. The commies. Fear program. The Russians are coming to get us. Have they ever attacked America? Have they ever declared war? No. So why do we fear Russia? Because they're politically different than us? Is that how far we go to debase ourselves of divide and conquer because they've got a different political ideology than we do, or Britain does, or Holland does, or Germany does? Another example this week of how the media ramps up the fear. And I'm going to play a song after this because I'm going to dedicate it to someone who died tragically in Liverpool this week, somebody I knew. Another one of those strange coincidences where you check a website that you haven't checked in a while, and then you see someone being run over on a road that I used to live, and only to find out 2 days later it was somebody I knew. So what happened in Liverpool this week is a teenage 14-year-old motorcyclist mowed down an elderly woman and kills her and flees. Hit and run. And it was only reported in the local press. That's all. The Liverpool region. Now in New York, we had national breaking news the same day. A motorist in a hit and run kills one and injures three. The only difference is there was 3 people injured. Both incidents, one person is killed. Why the difference in the reporting? Why is it local in Liverpool, but it has to be national breaking news in America? Fear programming. And we have to break down that fear programming. I'm going to attempt in the next piece, after I played this song, in dedication to May Laidlaw, who is the mother of a school friend of mine who died this week. May it be. May it be a tribute to May Laidlaw, who died this week. And rest in peace, girl. And out of all the nonsense that we have to endure now. But it was ironic that I found that piece, and then 2 days later to find out it was someone I knew. That's the way life works these days. There's no coincidences. You kind of led to certain pieces, and you then find out it's more prevalent than you realised. Right. Where are we next? Communism. I wanted to cover that this week because it causes much derision and anger and fear in the American populace, of when the reality is very few understand the real meaning of it. And this is deliberately done to cause division, and anything that can be deemed good is treated as bad, like the Illuminati. Originally they were enlightened, and there's countless others. The Freemasons, the original Freemasons, were not all satanic cults. And so I did some revision on the term communism, and it was first coined and defined in its modern day definition by the French philosopher and writer Victor Dupay, D''Hupay, in his 1777 book Project de Communist Philosophy. Dupay pushes the philosophy of the Enlightenment to principles which he lived up to during most of his life in his bastide of Fauveau, which is Provence. And this book can be seen as the cornerstone of the communist philosophy, as he defines this lifestyle as a commune, as in community, and advises to, quote, share all economic and material products between inhabitants of the commune, so that all may benefit from everybody's work. I'll repeat that again. Share all economic and material products between inhabitants of the commune, so that all may benefit from everybody's work. Now, according to Richard Pipes, the idea of a classless, egalitarian society first emerged in ancient Greece. In the 5th century, Mazdak movement in Persia, Iran, has been described as communistic for challenging the enormous privileges of the noble classes and the clergy, who had taken on the system then, for criticising the institution of private property and for striving to create an egalitarian society. So communists and communism was against the noble classes and the church. In the early 19th century, various social reformers founded communities based on common ownership. However, unlike many previous communist communities, they replaced the religious emphasis with a rational and philanthropic basis. Does that sound like something that should be mistrusted? Share all economic and material products. Isn't that what we said on this show? Everything belongs to everybody. Banks and oil don't belong to the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Silver, gold, uranium, and whatever other material that comes out of the ground belongs to everybody. That's what's called being a community, sharing and caring. Now, of course, like everything else, it gets twisted. And I mentioned earlier about a certain decade between 1910 and 1920. Of course, we had the Titanic that was deliberately taken down. Well, it wasn't actually the Titanic, it was the Olympic. And an insurance claim was had, but that was the side issue. The main issue was to kill off the representatives who were voting against a Federal Reserve Bank. Then we had 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution, Again, we mentioned them earlier. That's the Jew people, the Khazarians. 90% of them. In 1917 and then 1919 was the Balfour Declaration, which declared Britain was going to stand by the Jewish people, in inverted commas, and create a state of Israel. That's when our history changed, that decade. It changed for the term communist in 1917 with an October Revolution in Russia that set the conditions for the rise to state power of Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks. Sound familiar? Which was the first time any avowedly communist party reached that position, except they weren't following the communist ideology. They just collected it all for themselves, like the Rothschilds have done in every country. Let's not forget, before the war, why there was issues in Germany before the Second World War. The same bankers were bankrupting the country of Germany, and Hitler chose to throw them all out. The German mark was traditionally between 2 and 4 marks to the British pound. Then all of a sudden, with the Federal Reserve in place and the march of the global banking system under the Rothschild goons, suddenly that German mark was 20,000 to the pound. You needed bucket loads to buy a loaf. That's why Hitler turned on the people known as the Jews. Because of the same clowns that are running it now. The Rothschilds et al. And the banking system. And unfortunately, the average everyday Jewish person pays the price like everybody else. I have every sympathy with the Jewish people. But you have to understand the conditions that were set that played you like a pawn. They give you titles, the chosen people. It's like Clothhead Obama, Pindar, Penis Head. The irony in that. And so the Bolsheviks, the revolution, transferred all power to the All-Russian Congress of Soviets, in which the Bolsheviks had a majority, and then communism went oligarchy. Communism is community for the commune, against the noble classes and against the church. Is that such a bad political ideology, after all? If you don't believe me, go and read it yourself. It's all there. Look at the word communism, community, communalism, where a group of people get together and look after each other. Isn't that what we're trying to achieve here? But you've got 200 to 300 million Americans all terrified of the term communism. It's fear program. Because the things that people tell you to fear from the portal people are the ones you should be supporting. They've pulled that stunt over and over again, and we've fallen for it over and over again. It has to stop. I would like all our listeners to go and research the term communism. Methinks it's the closest we can get for a political ideology for what we want. Someone acting not based on commerce, not based from the military, but just spiritual people based on looking after, for and by the people. That's all we need in government. It's all we've ever needed. We don't need goons in the military and goons in commerce who think everything's about profit, when there's their own people, the veterans, lying on street corners. 500,000 American people, the so-called richest country in the world, the bestest ever country to live in. 500,000 people are on the streets, near 200,000 of which haven't got a roof over their heads. And we think this is acceptable? Well, it's not. Some internet fun and games. Some of you may have seen, I know the post got taken down rather quickly, but two goons have raised their ugly heads again this week. Captain Irrelevant himself, formerly known as Neil Keenan, has decided to pipe up again with more bullshittery about me. Not that it bothers me in particular. He can say what he likes. He has no facts, never did. So he just makes up a stream of lies and hopes they stick. Nice try, Captain Irrelevant. It failed last time, and it failed this time also. And the question remains, is it the real Neil Keenan? According to Mr. Crayford, it's not. And one or two other sources as well. Or is it a clone? Could be. To me, it's more likely a body double, as he certainly doubled his body weight and the size of his mouth over the last 18 months. Here's something for you, Neil Keenan.
Irrelevant! 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 I guess you're right.
The other person that's popped up this week, Captain Blue Chicken, Mr. Cody Good, with another begging bowl. This is getting beyond a joke now. Cody Good, the man who's part of the Nazi space program and who is their spokesperson, SS small p, not SS capital P, has decided that he's going to move home now, and has asked his members or his idiotic listeners to fund $12,000 for him to move home. Really? Oh, it didn't end there. What's worse is some people gave him it, all 12,000. What makes Corey Good so special? So a member in our group whose drains have collapsed needs $4,000. Another member who's struggling, got cataracts, needs $8,000, and this clown wants $12,000 to move home. Where's all the conference money, Corey? And if he thought that was bad, he's now asking for $6,000 for his wife's teeth. I've no doubt the idiots or the synthetics will give him it. Personally, I'd like to knock them out. But the lies that the two of them have perpetuated on the alternative community. 12,000 for moving home, 6,000 for his wife's teeth. What are those expenses, or what have those expenses got to do with disclosure and freedom? None. This is why I warned about it near 2.5 years ago. It's a scam. A failed snake oil salesman still pulling the wool over the sheep's eyes. Yes, you are sheep if you follow. But he's not giving you any material. It's all bullshit. Written scripts and storybooks from 20 years ago. But the question of the day is, why didn't the Blue Chicken Group transport him and his home in their blue orbs? You have all this ability. You know, after all, you can take him 20 years and back and return him in a second. But they can't transport him across the state. Not much of a ET specialist ET group, are they? Personally, I wished the Blue Chicken Group would take him and the person with the Nefertiti looking head, Wilcock, 20 years back on another timeline and leave them there. Problem solved. This is Corey related, although not directly, but this is a warning. And I know Randy Morgans has covered some of this in the past, but I will not warn again. And some people kind of took umbrage at a post I did this week, disclosing all the speakers at the next Contact in the Desert fake disclosure event. All of them have sold out to the covens. And I mean all of them. All who are on that list have sold out to the covens. And me personally, I don't particularly care which names are in there or not. Whether they wrote or said relevant stuff in the past. Makes no difference to me. I'm more concerned of them selling themselves into a non-disclosure group. Well, actually, it's not a group, it's a cult. Sponsored by the covens. Gaiam TV are operated by covens. One person I was glad who added himself to that list and threw his hat into their ring, as it saves me outing him anymore, is Gilliland. Mr. RV Man. Mr. The Palladians are coming to save us in his big announcement last week. No, they're not. And never were. That's the danger of that type of disclosure. Is while we wait for somebody else to save us, they annihilate us. This is what this cult is about. Spinning it out for disclosure for 50 years. Just like the cabal wants. So all the ones that are involved in all the MK Ultra and all the My Labs and all the other shenanigans will all be dead. So you can't come after them. And these people are taking money off them. one person left because he said I was dictating who people should like and who people shouldn't. I've never told anyone to dislike anyone. It's your choice at the end of the day. It always was. All I do is give word of warning from my opinion. Over time, that opinion has been proven far more correct than it has been wrong. When I first called bullshit on Corey Good when they were height of their popularity, I didn't have many support. In fact, I got a load of abuse. But 2 years down the line, people are now seeing it for what it is. Now, this is the warning, because it's happened again at a recent conference. Those that still choose to go to these events, again, it's your choice. But I'm going to give you a word of warning of what takes place at these events. It's called Contact in the Desert for a reason, except you won't be contacting ETs. What you will be contacting is black magic, jinns, mind control agents, government agents, rogue program members, and harvesting agents. There's a vast number of people coming away from these events with various maladies, shall we say. And the only way to get rid of them takes specialist people in that field, and there are very few around. You get infected by those type of people and you're in serious trouble. You won't be cured by a doctor or a hospital from these type of infections. Again, it's your choice whether you believe what I'm saying or not. It doesn't make any difference to me. What does make a difference is I have to put out that warning. If it stops one person from being affected by these cult members, then that warning was valid. What I have been told is it seems my initial reticence to follow anything or everything of the person known as QAnon is now confirmed as correct. It's largely BS. Not all of it. It has to contain some truth to hook you in. That's the problem. But most of that is scripted straight out of one of the agencies to appease one of the factions. This is their game, not ours. And as one gets exposed, another one pops up, and this is how it works. So QAnon got exposed badly this week by a person by the name of Meganon and others. So, like Corey and his 20-year and back, it started to get pulled apart and exposed. And then lo and behold, Corey goes quietly into the background, begging for money. And suddenly 2 or 3 others come forward with the same story to take the heat off Corey. This is how it works. It's up to us to spot it. Like Neil Keenan, he stepped down, and his buddy Robert David Steele stepped up. Same group. You know, Keenan's that important. He's got letters after his name. CIA. Captain Irrelevant. So Megan Anon has chimed in and put a lot of stuff out, and some of it was okay and some of it's not. And this time she roped in agency and coven stooge David Wilcock into the mix. You see, David puts out a big piece. He's that important that a complete unknown female calls him under the banner of Megan Anon to tell him more script, which is like all his other scripts. Bullshit. Sorry. Where are we? Close to the second hour. I've got no, I'm going to do this now. This is something that people need to pay close attention to. There's been a number of things revealed over the last 4 to 5 weeks on how we attain personal development. Stuff to do with the sun, stuff to do with the construct going down and the veils and all that stuff, and this plays in. And this is where all people have to reach this level, but it doesn't come overnight. And this is why we started asking people to deal with the shadow sides at an increased rate from May 2015. If you haven't done it to date, maybe you'll consider it after this piece. So, in light of a recent event, I feel I need to get people to look at, in some aspects, a theory, and some aspects, reality, that could tie in to how we finally exit this construct and fake reality. Now here's where it involves you, and only you can do it. Once an individual reaches a certain level of understanding on a personal evolutionary level, and that is aligned with much shadow and inner work, things change. Doors open in the dream time and in the awake time. Now this cannot be attained by just throwing your attention at it for a short time. It's a build-up of the multi-dimensional aspect of the you. It involves aligning with your higher self, aligning with your golden light, not violet, golden light, which requires all chakras to be clear, which means you must go beyond the 3 lower chakras currently where most people operate from. You have to activate the top 3 and then operate from the heart, singularity. We covered that in a recent show. Operate from the heart. Be from the heart. Now after a period of time, when that list is done, you will be presented with an opportunity during your dream time. Now, I will not give the full details because it may be different in some aspects for each individual. it may not be. And I don't want to preempt what an experience will be for somebody else. But you will see a curved bridge. Some may call it the Rainbow Bridge, with something at the end of the bridge. At that point, I will not spoil it what it is, as like I said, it may be different for each person, but there's something at the end of that bridge. But once you see what is at the end, you must leap blind. And this may explain the term a leap of faith, where that came from. You must leap blind. Now this is where you will have to be in full trust of the self. Ignore 3D limitation and think possible. Once you take that leap, you will be surprised what's on the other side. I will not give that part away either. A choice is then given to you on whether you go on from there or go back in to help others. Only you can make that choice. If you don't make the leap, you fall and you are back where you started. You will not see the fall. That's why I said you must leap blind. Once you see the fall, it's too late. This plays into the matrix. You will all know the part. So, a leap of faith is required that transcends time and space. So this kind of got me thinking again. And this is where the theory part comes in. Twice a year, the powers that be decide to change time. In February or March, depending on if you're in America or Europe, the clocks go forward. And the term is called leap forward. In October or November, the clocks go back, as in fall. So is it leap or fall? But what happens every 4th year as our planet moves 6 hours further away from the sun each year, which requires a leap year and a day is added. That's messing with time. So here's the theory. We had major warnings over Y2K, year 2000. 2012 we were going to ascend, 2016 other stuff was going to happen. And I suggested in a recent show that 2020 was a key date. Well, it is. As we may get to 2020 vision. Why is that called 2020 vision? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Maybe that's a clue. Where we actually see stuff, not the illusion. But those 4 dates I've just give all have one thing in common. Apart from the 4-year loop. All fall on a leap year. So is it possible we get a chance to escape every 4 years? Hence the 4-year loop cheat that was inserted into this timeline between 2012 and 2016. Look at the people that went missing in the alternative media in 2013 and returned recently. The people who were around 2012, 2013, all of a sudden came back in 16 and 17. Is that a coincidence? No, it's not. 4-year loop. But another quirk, or maybe it's not a coincidence, is the Olympics are every 4 years, which just happens to fall on every leap year. Maybe the athletics event is also a hint. Long distance running with a leap. Now, this got me thinking again. And the saying made by Neil Armstrong, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, has a whole new meaning to it, doesn't it? Somehow, I'll find my way home. Hi all and welcome back. That was somehow, wasn't it? You keep wrecking our heads each week. Too much to think and too much to ponder. Well, like I've said previous, they spend 24/7, 365 days a year trying to keep us under control. We have to match it. And the best way to achieve that is to start unhooking from their program of lies and deceit. You know, it's kind of, there's many things to admire about America. That's why I came here. But the political and history is ugly, and that has to be faced if we're going to go forward with any sort of clean slate. The soldiers who have all lost their lives, been maimed, been made homeless, and even if they haven't suffered that, they've suffered trauma. I put on the page, all soldiers was sold out, and that's spelt SOULED. They obviously weren't aware. It's not their fault. But the clowns who sent them there were more than aware. One of the few people I speak to asked me a question this week, which is a big step forward in an awakening. And asked me why the American military is revered far more so in this country than the soldiers in other countries. So I asked him, I didn't give him an answer, I gave him a question back. Which military were treated in the same way? And he thought about it and he said, Germany. I said, yes, because it's the same people, the same ideology. That's running America, that was running Nazi Germany. Project Paperclip, you're all aware of that now. That's who we're dealing with. They're the goons over in Norway and NATO, still wanting to attack Russia. They're the goons that think that white people are more special than others. But no. All people are. They're the goons that think countries are important. They're not. I'll borrow a term that Shane used, Shane the Runer. They're just lines on a piece of paper. So when you boil it down, that's all it is. Or you put walls up, like they did in Berlin, like they did in Israel. Same people, again. Now we're being proposed a wall in America. Do you not see the coincidence in it all? It's all there. I know people don't like facing the truth, because it's uncomfortable. And the old saying was, fascism will never be allowed to rise again, because we're aware of it now. But we're not, are we? We've allowed it to fester in this country and take over. Interesting couple of episodes I watched in 4400 this week. It spoke about a breakaway private corporation connected to the agencies. Sound familiar? Running clandestine operations. NSA, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, none have congressional oversight. They run their own shop, they make their own rules, they take their own money, all off us. And people don't think we've not been taken over. How can you have an operation outside of the American government running the country and not see it? CIA, NSA, Department of Homeland Security, which is the exact same term Hitler gave for his organisation. Department of Homeland Security. It's right in your face. But we're too clever in America. There's no way we would allow fascism. But we already have. National Zionism. That's where the term Nazi comes from. A merging of the white power, nationalist, and the Zionist, Bolshevik, Khazarian Jews. Nazi. Some of those factions are fighting now, which is why we're seeing various disclosures on the portal people, throwing each other under the bus, fighting for control. And we, the public, will get victories out of that, because certain big names will be sacrificed. I mentioned 3 before. But that doesn't mean to say we have won, because it will be a foolish mistake. Because there's a den of filth hidden all over this country, in fact all over the world, that has to be cleaned out before we can really start going forward full steam ahead with a better world for the benefit of all people, where nobody gets left out because of classes, because of certain bloodlines, or because you're royalty and all that bollocks. Nobody's more important than anybody else. Trump's no more important than you are. He just has a different job. But when you boil it down, that's all it is. Trump may come through. I've always doubted. You all know that. I gave you all the reasons 2 years ago, in the summer of 15. It didn't go down too well in Cosmic Voice. It didn't go down too well with Drake. But I'm not interested in personalities. I'm not interested in parties either. I'm not interested in labels. Well, we need the left in or the right. You know, what does that mean? Or we need a more liberal this or conservative that. No. It's simple. We just need good people who will look after, for and by the people. That's all it takes. Not in the back pocket of AIPAC, Mr. Trump. Not in the back pocket of some descendants of Paperclip. Or not in the back pocket of the Pope and his Jesuit army. Or to some bogus Chinese elders. American people first, not America the country, is the real term that Trump or anybody else who's appointed president of this country. American people first. Same in the UK. UK people first, May. 2 billion for this, and another 800 million for some nuclear warheads, and nothing for the nurses. Oh, we've got no money for that. No. That's our money. The US Army awarding 750 million contracts for more planes. How many planes do they need? There's a whole desert full of them. Go and fix them. 4 to 5 million a plane. It's ridiculous. That 4 to 5 million can go and help the homeless off the streets. So if Trump's going to come through, American people first, not United States, which has nothing to do with America, period. It's to do with the corporation breakaway under Rome, which is why we've got a Senate, why we had a republic government, and why we had a constitution, because it's still under Rome. If you want to put a label on it, try communalism. A group of people get together and look after each other. Is that so difficult? All it takes is a little bit of common sense, which is lacking badly at the top end of this country. And sadly, it's lacking badly amongst the people. They're just allowing everything to be stripped. Homes, lifestyles, wages. Your driver's license that we don't even need, classed as a privilege. Really? Your social security, which is your entitlement, is now classed as a benefit. That's your money. It's not theirs. Well, while we keep ignoring the issues which we can deal with, they'll keep carrying on, stripping us of everything. Wealth, lifestyle, wages, the whole lot. Homes, businesses. All it takes is to think and act different. That's all. Where are we? Let's get into some questions. Enough ranting for 1 week. It just enrages me, the stupidity. Is anything going down before the end of the year? I'm sick of the lies and I can't take it anymore. Well, we're all sick of the lies, but we're learning a lot of truth along the way, which then provides a foundation, a platform to go forward with. Part of the problem we face in America, was the show is based largely in America, but it applies to every other country, because people don't know what the problem is. So if you don't know what the problem is, how can you provide a solution? Like earlier, you mentioned communism. This whole country is based, the whole theme, on hating the term commie, or the Russians are communistic China. When if it's implemented in the way it was set up to be, it's everything that we wanted. Against the noble classes, against the crimes of the clergy, the church, taking everything. That's where we have to start being clever and understanding where these terms come from. Republic, Constitution, Senate, came from Rome. It was there 2,000 years ago. Not the founding fathers. They were just the puppets of the day who put forward their ideology, not ours. Going forward, if we get somebody in place to run the country for and by the people have to create their own constitution, not theirs. There'll be basic elements in it that could be applied to the new one, but that's their constitution, not ours. And the idea going forward of a foreign agent, be it Rome, City of London, Federal Reserve, IRS, or the 3- and 4-letter agencies, none of which are affiliated to America, none of them, including NASA. Separate entities with no congressional oversight. That has to stop. That's where an update of the Constitution comes in. You have mentioned there are 4 laws of the universe in Th&I in the past. Would you please reiterate what those 4 laws are? Well, it comes under common natural law. Thou shalt not murder, injure, harm or steal. If everyone applied that, which is, as Drake used to call it, the golden rule, you wouldn't need courts. You wouldn't need police. Can't murder, injure, harm or steal. Imagine a society with those 4 wiped out. Not realistic? Maybe. But at least we can try. This is more, a letter from one of the members. I'm going to read it out. I think it might have a question in it. I can't remember. Anyway, it was interesting anyway. And here's somebody who's actually doing stuff. This mail is about my heart's wish to initiate a truth and reconciliation between the Catholic Church and the victims of sexual assault. I have written many emails to the UN Director, Christine Muller. That's German. Sorry, I know that upset some. Kirsten Sandberg and the committee who have written a good report and ended it right there. That report was written to keep people satisfied and quiet. Fear. I've also written to Desmond Tutu and his organisation, Kevin Annett and Mr. Timmermans of the EU, all without any response. Again, it's fear. Well, Kevin's a bit busy man. I can't speak for the other two, but Kevin's a busy man. Why the UN, you might ask? Well, my belief is the UN is still there, but it was founded by light workers and later on infiltrated by the Jesuits and Freemasons, as you know. Why not start a truth and reconciliation from within the UN? I know that they are scared, but in collective we do stand united. It may be naive from my side, but I have a great belief in me and the people. I'm hoping from the bottom of my heart that you are able to help me. Your entourage is much larger than mine. I just do not know where to start or do any more. I know some heads have to roll and maybe my timing's off. None of my friends and entourage will help me. They rather put their head into the ground. Too heavy, but not me. That's what a heart's wish does. How can you truly heal your heart if you don't know the truth? It will only set you free after being angry and sad. So thanks for that, Bridget. I will see if I can get in contact with Kevin. I know he's been threatened by some of those organisations that you mentioned. It's not fun being on the front line, exposing that level of truth. You get lots of threats. But yes, it would help. But the UN has got to be cleaned out altogether. Recently, there's been I did a UN piece earlier today. I think that's the third or fourth where the UN is actually looking at things now, which they haven't been doing in the past. They've sat by, and particularly to do with Israel. I know they've issued a number of sanctions. In fact, Israel's had more sanctions than all the other countries in the world put together, and yet nothing was done. To me, you can write pieces of paper, but like Anna von writes to the Pope and all the others, unless it's enforceable, and they have the forces to enforce it. That's why I have an issue with the UN. Israel and Palestine could have been fixed 40 years ago. I mentioned this when I was 19. Same as at the time when it was going on in Ireland and Northern Ireland. All you had to do is put UN peacekeepers along the wall. That's all. And get both sides speaking. It then becomes fairly obvious which side is not interested in peace. So keep writing, because you never know who picks that letter up. Maybe there's some people inside the UN that may see that and maybe be able to deal with it. So don't be discredited. There's a lot of people in a lot of organisations now. It's not just them that's infiltrated. We have our own. So keep writing, and maybe one day you will get what you're looking for. But I'll message Kevin and see if I can get him to contact and see where it goes. Is it possible you can give an update on where things stand with the trust and the kingdom work, and where does America stand? Not at this time. The minute I have anything to do with the trust and the kingdom, there will be a show. maybe our special show. Why are they desperately and obviously trying to destroy California? Oh, I covered this earlier. I warned of it back in 2014. I thought at that time it appears they were emptying out the whole of California. A bit like they emptied out the New Orleans section. A bit like they emptied out Detroit. It's not a one-off. When it's happened 2 or 3 times, it goes beyond conspiracy, does it not? Well, you've had water droughts and then too much rain, dams blowing. Sound familiar? A bit like New Orleans, really. Energy weapons causing fires. The key is getting to the bottom of why. There's a number of theories to do with land grabs, and maybe California was sold to the Chinese. Nothing concrete on that. Well, take your pick. But either way, it doesn't look good. And this goes into a piece I did a few months ago when I played Tomorrow Belongs to Me, highlighting the Nazis in this country. And I did a long piece. Well, they came for the blacks, and I'm not black, so it doesn't matter, does it? They came for the gays, and it went on and on. I still got that piece somewhere. And I also mentioned every state in America for a purpose. So just because it's happening in California doesn't mean people of Michigan, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, New York should ignore it. If you keep ignoring it, they'll come for your state. That's not possible. They said that about fascism. Remember that. I'm wondering if the clowns have jumped timelines into a new and younger bodies, either before they died or when they died. They're up to all kinds of fun and games with clones. Red and blue ties being the more prominent one at the moment. The younger versions is more to do with the harvesting of the children and the endocrine gland. Why has the drama ramped up so much if most on the main players are no longer around? Well, we did warn on this show that it would ramp up a lot this year, the unravelling, and it's unravelled spectacularly. So much ground has been made. In fact, there's been that much of it, we kind of become blasé about it, how much has actually been exposed this year. Because we want to get to the end goal quicker. We all do. But when you see the depth of filth and lies, and how far and deep it goes, then you'll understand why it takes so long. It takes so long because in essence there's too few at the top end being able to make the change. We don't have the resources, they do. So we have to be clever. Sun Tzu, The Art of War Without Firing Weapons, they've got militaries to call on. We're making alliances and making progress on that, but it's a slow process, and none of us like to hear that, me included. I want to get on with the foundation, and people want to, get on with the other programs that are being rolled out. It's going to be beneficial for all people. But just because certain players, you said if most of the main players are no longer around, that tells you there and then, in your own question, that those people are just pawns. It's the people that is pushed forward are, in essence, irrelevant. It's the program and ideology behind what they're doing. That's the real issue. That's why I'll still say, if Trump pulls through, I'll hold my hands up. I hope he does. I hope I'm wrong on Trump. 100%. But how can Trump operate with a vast range of foreign agents with no congressional oversight, with vast budgets, running a country? How can you perform under those circumstances? Whether you're good, bad or neutral, you just can't. That's why I don't go on personalities and parties, because both of them are completely irrelevant. Soros, according to my sources and others, died in November of last year. There was some kickback because Black Lives Matter basically vanished overnight. Yes, you see the odd one here and there, but nowhere near the levels of coverage while he was alive. But the program carries on. This program has been going on for thousands of years. People come, people go, people die, people get taken out. But the program itself carries on. And this is, again, why I've warned that pulling certain individuals in, whilst it will cause a level of excitement, unless it deals with the core issue, it's just a small victory on one day, because the program carries on. We have to stop the program, people. The puppet string, the deep states, the agencies, the factions, they're the core of the issue. All this AI stuff being rolled out is intense. Yep. They're basically telling you what's coming, and it's up to us whether we counteract it or not. And this is why I've covered it extensively over the last 2 months, although I've been warning of the dangers of technology for a few years now, for that very reason. It slowly creeps up on you, and the danger is, if we don't address it for what it is, it becomes a runaway train. Once it gets to that stage, we're having the robot world, whether we like it or not. We're having transhumanism, whether we like it or not. And it's up to us to stop it. We've stopped many things. We've exposed many things, so don't think that we can't do it, because we can. We've proven that. but we have to be aware of our participation in it and not go out and buy bloody Alexas and all that nonsense, or home security systems, all nicely packaged and bundled in, save you some money on your cable. Yeah, right. You've just given your privacy away, because they hear and record everything. And then you wonder if you start mentioning something at home and suddenly the advert relating to that thing you spoke about appears on the TV out of like magic. Mention, oh, I enjoyed going to X such and such country or such and such state, and lo and behold, the advert's on about the very state or country you just mentioned. You think that's a coincidence? Think again. We have to analyse what we're doing to facilitate it and counteract it and stop it. And this is kind of what this show's all about in many ways. Thomas Wadsworth moving Israel's capital, I covered that earlier. Utter insanity, if you ask me. That's my opinion on it. What do we know and can disclose about the continued rash of massive fires in California and the West Coast? Are these considered natural or no? Continued energy weapons, partially in support of a UN Agenda 2030. I would be very careful about that date. I'd wheeled it back to the first date. That's one way of lulling you into a false sense of security. It may be correct, but don't be lulled into a false sense of security thinking we've got another 9 years. We can't wait. These people have zero compassion for anything. To them, it's just an end goal, and we're sacrificial offerings. We've served their purpose, we've created their wealth, we've created their structure, we've built it. We, not them. They've never got their hands dirty in their life. Now they decide that we are a blight. Look at the Georgia Guidestones. So they're going to bring robots in to replace us. Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch has just bought 40 Tesla trucks. No driver. See where it's going. Like I covered in the last show, 800 million jobs will be replaced by robots in the next 10 years. Where's those 800 million jobs going to? You know, if you consider maybe 66% of the world population are adults, and so the children, and apart from the sweatshop countries, which America's rapidly descending into with the low wages. You got 2/3 of the adults, maybe half of them are elderly or retired. You keep lowering the numbers, and then you take 800 million away. There's not many people with jobs, is there? You got 4 billion, take the ridiculous figure of 7 billion, which I don't think it is. Others will argue different. And you got 4 billion adults. half of which are maybe retired or elderly or disabled, you're down to 2 billion. And 800 million jobs is gone. That's 40%. Doesn't look good, does it? That's why we have to keep fighting to stop it. We can't sit around waiting for Trump to drain the swamp. We have to be proactive, not reactive, because when it gets to a reactive stage, it's too late. It's the runaway train. We can't wait for that. Driving people out to California to date, beyond the destroyed personal property, has driven tens of thousands of people and families off their land temporarily. No, not temporarily. Have the people from Katrina gone back? Largely, no. Have the people of Haiti in 2011 gone back? No. Will the people of Puerto Rico go back? No. See how it creeps up? The totalitarian creep. And you keep ignoring it, it keeps creeping up on you until it's too late. Until the insurance companies reject payment under the Act of God contract language. Yep, because we allow it. We sign it. You know, to me, insurance companies should be wiped out. Again, if you applied the golden rule, you wouldn't have needed insurance companies. You've got the car manufacturers who are sitting on technology where it makes it impossible, if installed in all cars, to have an accident. Why is it not implemented? Because it will end the insurance companies, who are part of the noble bloodline establishment classes, like ING, International Netherlands Group, House of Orange. Same people. Transcends time. How are we for time? I'll probably end on that question because I want to read this out. This would be a fitting way to end this show. It was sent to me by one of the guests from An Evening with Thomas, Zoo Zander. He was on a week last Sunday, I think. And I asked him could I read it out, and he said, yeah, okay, so I'm going to read this out. And it was written by an American writer, Max Ehrman, in 1927, and it's called Desiderata. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, as they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for there will always be a greater and lesser person than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let us not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for higher ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe. No less than the trees and the stars, you have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him or her to be, and whatever your labours and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life. Keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy. Well said. Right, that's the end of another show. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Lots to think on again. Certain aspects may appear to be alarming, may appear to be fearful. It's only fearful if we ignore the obvious warnings. Fear is a future event. It's not something in the past or now. It's a future event. I fear this may happen. That means it hasn't took place. That means we can use our manifest abilities to change it. No matter what the odds are, a collection of people striving for the same thing will make the changes. Just requires a change of mindset. Right, where are we next? First of all, before I go, I want to commend Janet Elliott, who I thought was rather brave in an interview or show with me on last Sunday, An Evening with Thomas. Wasn't easy to come out with some of that stuff, so kudos to her. And my next show, there won't be an Evening with Thomas this Sunday because I'm on with the OYM lads at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Full show this time, so that is always some fun, and it generally gets rather interesting, so tune in for that this Sunday, December the 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OYM. We'll probably ask Alan and Steve to post the link on the page, and look forward to that. Right, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams.